morning of Friday, the 5th of March, 1945, the American army were preparing to enter the city of Cologne. Before them lay a sea of rubble which had once been Germany's fourth largest city. They were awestruck. This once great, thriving industrial city, throbbing with energy and power, was now nothing but a heap of twisted iron and broken bricks. Blown up bridges, wrecked railways and rolling stock, gutted churches, shattered towers and shells of factories now lay where this great city once proudly stood. At precisely 700 hours, the order was given for the Corps to advance and capture the city. Tank engines roared into life, their tracks screeching and squealing over the fallen masonry. Steadily but slowly the infantry advanced. There appeared to be little resistance. The German troops had withdrawn, leaving behind only a small token force to defend the city. Street by street, the Americans cleared Cologne of snipers. By early afternoon, it was all over, and the first of the fighting patrols were about to share an experience they would never forget. These men had seen war-battered towns before. They had already seen the effects and the devastation that the war had caused to the towns of Cologne, and Aachen. But they were not prepared for what they saw in this city, Cologne. The sight they beheld was awesome. The city lay in complete ruins, save only for the spires of the cathedral, which still soared miraculously to the sky. One war correspondent, on witnessing the ruins firsthand, wrote, "A city is a plan on a map, only here there is no plan. A city means movement and noise and people, not silence and emptiness and stillness, a kind of cemetery stillness. A city should be full of life, and when you find instead the complete negation of life, the effect is shattering." As the first of the GIs crunched their way over the broken glass and concrete, they were increasingly dismayed at what they saw and smelt. From below the rubble came the stench of rotting bodies. Gradually from out of the charred walls, from cellars and caverns dug out of the rubble, the Cologne citizens came out into the bright March sunshine. Small groups of ashen-faced survivors who had lived in candlelit cellars for weeks. Soon, more and more groups of people cautiously emerged from the debris. Behind the leading patrol of GIs came the 104th Division, spreading out across the city, mopping up the remaining snipers. Tanks wrestled their way around craters and over rubble which once was somebody's home. In some areas, the fallen masonry was so deep that the streets below were hidden. All that remained was a mass of gutted, roofless shells. And yet beneath this debris, people were still living. 40,000 of the city's inhabitants had makeshift homes amongst the fallen concrete. Before the war, 800,000 people lived and worked in the city. Now, only a handful remain. In the wrecked square in front of the Opera House, there was a sign painted in both English and German. It read, "Give me 5 years and you will not recognize Germany again. Adolf Hitler." How did all this destruction come about? Before the morning was over, the sound was heard yet again of bombers approaching the city. This time, however, it was 3 lonely mosquitoes, but they didn't drop bombs in the city, only leaflets. The message was, the RAF's offensive in its new form has begun. It was certain that on this morning, the Royal Air Force had left no doubts in the minds of the citizens of Cologne as to the horrors that were still to come. But war has a peculiar effect on people, and just as the Luftwaffe had not broken the spirit of the British when they had bombed London, the morale of the people of Cologne had actually strengthened. One woman recalled, "Never before that night had I known such terror, but I know one thing now, I shall never be afraid again." The aerial bombing of Cologne continued up until January 1945, when the all-clear siren sounded over the city for the last time. Few people realized that the last real air raid was over. There was nothing to mark the end of the terror that had begun with the 1,000 bomber raid in 1942. Nothing to celebrate. But as one peaceful night gave way to another, there came a dawning of hope. Hope that at last, those terrifying whistles of bombs dropping and the nerve-shattering thuds as they hit the city were now only memories. Many of Cologne's citizens today still have memories of those endless raids which devastated a complete city. Today, the modern European city of Cologne has recovered. The spires of the cathedral, which miraculously survived the bombardment, tower above the skyline in the heart of the city.